During spring break, Lucy went on a very special trip. She went with teachers and friends to Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and New York City. There were so many things to do and see, and many opportunities for her to practice her reading skills. She got to ride in an airplane all the way to the east coast of the United States from her home in California. To make sure she and her group got on the right flight, they checked the boards that tell you information about the flights. To find her seat on the plane, she had to find the signs to tell her where to sit. Lucy went to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. She got to see Amelia Earhart's plane and the Wright brothers' first flying machine. Lucy saw memorials of two important people in our nation's history, like Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., and the memorial to Franklin Roosevelt that showed people from the time of the Great Depression. This statue is for the Marine Corps. It is called the Iwo Jima Memorial. And of course, she went to the White House. Lucy was impressed at the Library of Congress. Thomas Jefferson sold his whole library to them when the first Library of Congress was burned. He loved books and said, "I cannot live without books," in a letter to his friend. And this is his library. He had books of every kind and on many subjects. Of course, Lucy had to learn something and leave with something too. George Washington was the tallest of all the statues in the room of people who signed the Declaration of Independence at Independence Hall in Philadelphia. Lucy saw the Liberty Bell, and in New York, Lucy went to the 9/11 Museum and the 9/11 Memorial. She went to see a musical on Broadway called Matilda. It is based on a book by Ronald Dahl about a girl who loves to read books and tell stories, just like Lucy. Lucy went to the National Museum of the American Indian in New York, too. Of all the things that she saw, the thing that she had the hardest time reading was the Constitution, so she asked her teacher for help. Her teacher read her the book We Are the Kids.
We the Kids, the Preamble to the Constitution of the United States. Illustrations and foreword by David Catrow. Big words, big ideas. The first time I was forced to think about the Constitution was in 5th grade. President's Day was coming up, and my teacher, Mrs. Baldwin, wanted to talk about big ideas. Stuff like freedom, liberty, founding fathers, presidents. I sat doodling a picture of George Washington riding the red 27-inch Johnny Ginger Mountain Ranger bike I hope to get for my next birthday. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, she recited, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. I remember thinking, man, why couldn't the guys who wrote this just use regular English? Establish justice? Ensure domestic tranquility? But I guess that's just how everyone talked back in the olden times. Like my grandfather, who always said things like Rip Snorton, Hornswoggle, and Rudy Tooty. I'm a much older guy now, and I've figured out that our Constitution is simply a list of rules and promises written down by people just like you and me. Some were tall, some were short, some were thin, fat, or hairy, and all of them used to be kids. So you definitely don't have to be a grown-up to understand what they wrote. For me, the Constitution is a kind of how-to book, showing us ways to have happiness, safety, and comfort. Sounds like common sense, right? But a couple of 100 years ago, those things weren't common at all. For instance, Back then, if you said or wrote something and the people in charge didn't like it, they could put you in jail or stick tar and feathers all over you. Ouch! Now, even though a lot has changed, if you listen, the rules in our Constitution still make good sense. And tar is used to make highways, and feathers are strictly for the birds. A few years ago, I went and saw the real Constitution in Washington, D.C. It's an old, brown, crackly looking thing with curly handwriting that is almost impossible to read. But when it was new, it gave us rights and privileges that nobody had ever seen before. It let us decide for ourselves what kind of life we wanted to have. At certain times, I wanted to be a garbage man, baseball player, brain surgeon, and airline pilot. Instead, I became a dad, an artist, and a political cartoonist. When I paint my paintings or draw my cartoons, I can do them any way I want. Being able to do that makes me feel very happy and very free. And I think that's exactly what all those old guys with their big words and big ideas wanted for themselves, for me, and for other grown-ups, and maybe especially for kids. The words in the preamble and what they mean. Preamble. That means the first part of something, an introduction. We, the people of the United States. That means all the people in our country, including kids. In order to form a more perfect union. That means to come together and make things better for everyone who lives in our country. Establish justice. That means to make things fair and honest for everyone. Ensure domestic tranquility. That means we can all have a nice life and get along with one another. Provide for the common defense. That means to protect us from other people or countries who might try to harm us, as in a war, and to help us if we have been harmed. Promote the general welfare. That means to help make life good for everybody, having enough to eat, a place to live, being safe, and having friends and fun times are some of the things that make our lives good. And secure the blessings of liberty. That means to protect our rights and freedoms and not let anyone take them away. Being able to choose our religion, to say what we think, and to get together with friends, family, and other people are some of the freedoms we have. To ourselves and our posterity. That means for kids, parents, other grown-ups, and all the people born in our country after we are. Do ordain and establish this Constitution. That means to write down and then to live by a list of rules and promises for our government to keep and our people to obey. For the United States of America. That means our country, where we live. These big words expressed big ideas. Check out what the dog is doing in this story. He will also help you understand what they mean. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.